Auctions are becoming an increasingly popular way for properties to be sold, although they do occasionally have a negative connotation attached to them. Let's discuss the good and the bad. The positives of buying at auction are that auction is public. You can see who you're competing with, and there's no behind-the-scenes negotiations. It is a completely transparent process. The process is also faster when buying at auction. There are no drawn-out negotiations waiting on the vendor to respond, and there's no back and forth. The auction meets the reserve set by the vendor, and you win the auction. You enter into an agreement that day, and there's no risk of a last-minute offer trumping yours from a buyer before contracts are exchanged. The less than positive parts of buying an auction include there's no cooling off period, and you can't get formal approval from the lender prior to winning the auction. Basically, the moment the auction ends, you're liable for the deposit if you decide to pull out of the transaction. It's not a huge issue. A pre-approval that has been manually assessed, not a pre-approval that has been system generated, ensure you know what yours is a strong indication that you'll be formally approved pending evaluation. On the valuation front, there's a growing number of lenders that will rely on a contract of sale for the valuation, which bypasses this hurdle. Send the address of the property to your broker prior to the auction so they can ensure you're not going to run into any issues here. It's also worth having your conveyancer review the contract prior to auction, and if you want to complete a pest and building inspection, do this now also. The property doesn't meet the reserve price, in which case the property is passed in and considered not sold. The highest bidder is then invited to negotiate with the seller. This one has a bit of a positive light to it. An auction essentially is getting buyers to set the market value as opposed to the seller setting the price. The auction shows what the market thinks the property is worth, and this can form the basis of your negotiations. If you're the successful bidder, you pay the deposit at the conclusion of the auction, as well as sign the contract of sale. It's worth noting as well that if a property is passed in at auction and you agree to terms to purchase the property on the same day that the auction was held, you would be buying under auction conditions and there would still be no calling off period.